This game coming up there on Lake Washington on Saturday. First off, it's so funny how many years you and I talked when the Pac-12 was dreadful. Now the Pac-12 is freaking awesome, and it's going away, right? This is going to be a great matchup with Oregon and Washington.
It's going to be incredible. And the thing about this is so different than Oklahoma-Texas last week. Like, the winner of Oklahoma-Texas can't really rest on that. Like, I don't know why Danny Stutzman made those T-shirts, because it just means Texas players are going to wear them when they play in the Big 12 championship game with a playoff berth on the line. Like, they're going to play each other again. We know that. The winner of this game probably is making the Pac-12 championship game. The loser might not, though, because both of these teams still have to play USC, Utah, Oregon State, and Washington State. So those are easily losable games for either one of these teams. You need this mulligan. You got to win this game.
You're absolutely right about that. When you look at this matchup, do you just basically give the home field advantage to Washington? That's the difference in this game, because both these teams offensively look so balanced in terms of how close they are. Or do you see one edge one way or the other?
No, I think Oregon's better on the line of scrimmage. That's why I picked Oregon. I think they're better on the D line, better on the O line. Now, Washington could prove me wrong, because it's not like they're some finesse team. I think people look at Michael Penix and those receivers and say, oh, they just air it out. They're all soft. No, they're not soft at all at Washington. I just think Oregon is very good on both lines of scrimmage, and I think that makes a big difference.
I don't think you'd be surprised, but the chatter here in Los Angeles, Andy Staples, is about the line of scrimmage, both offensively and defensively at USC. They had every right to lose that game on Saturday night, late into the night where you live there, against Arizona. Arizona's much improved, to be fair, but they're headed to South Bend. Talk about that matchup with USC and Notre Dame.
That one's an interesting one, because the Notre Dame people are so down on their offense right now. I'm like, just wait, because USC's defense is not as good as Louisville's defense or Duke's defense or Ohio State's defense. Like, you will score some points this week. The question is, how much can Notre Dame limit USC's offense as the best defense that USC has played so far? And look, Caleb Williams is a magician. He's incredible. Like, they do not win that Arizona game with a normal quarterback. They had to have Superman to win that game. And they might go in this game because he's Superman. But that's the only way they do it. He has to be superhuman, because that defense doesn't give him another choice.
Andy, good matchup in Corvallis between UCLA and Oregon State. This UCLA team defensively flying under the radar. They had that hiccup at Rice Eccles. But other than that, can this team with the young freshman and Dante Moore go on the road and beat DJ Uiagalelei and company?
Yeah, this is a tough one, because I feel like in the Pac-12, the location has mattered. I know I just said I'm picking Oregon and Seattle, but it's the same thing. Like, when Utah went up to Corvallis, it was right after Utah had beaten UCLA. And those two games, that Utah-UCLA game and the Oregon State-Utah game, feel like whoever was the home team was going to win that game. And so I feel like with the teams at this level in the Pac-12, you just pick the home team when they seem fairly even. And I think Oregon State probably gets it done, because they have a little better offense than what UCLA's seen so far. Because Utah, remember, no Cam Rising, no Brant Keithy. That's not the same offense that Utah had last year.
UCLA's defense has been the surprise of the conference, no?
No, I mean, I think Arizona being as good as it was against Washington and USC was, and their record's bad. Like, you look at their record and you're like, oh, they're having a terrible season. No, they're actually pretty good. And you think, hopefully that sort of evens out for them as the season goes on, because they're playing really well. Like, I was really surprised that they were in a one-score game with Washington and should have beaten USC.
Andy, how does Miami not have an interim football coach this week?
Well, buyouts are a thing, and that would be very expensive. So that's why, because you can't be fired for cause for just I don't even know what to call it. We're calling it the brain lock at Hard Rock. Like, I have no idea what to call what happened there. It's the dumbest thing you've ever seen. And the thing is, you've actually seen it before with Mario Cristobal. Like, he's not a knee taker. Although I guarantee you he is a knee taker from now on. From this point forward, he will take knees when it is mathematically right to take a knee. My guess is there is now somebody wearing a U on their polo shirt whose job it is to just look at the clock and go, okay, coach, knee.
What did he say after the game? I didn't hear. Did he make an excuse?
No, he said he should have taken a knee. There's no excuse you can make.
James Franklin was asked a question he didn't like. Okay. And actually, I had Franklin's. I agreed with Franklin in this spot. Now, Franklin has done some unsavory things.
When you and him agree.
Yeah. Franklin has done some unsavory things in the past we won't go into. But some donk got on some press call and asked him a question that was ridiculous. Franklin was freaking hilarious in his retort. Now, Franklin's got a wagon this year. Offensively, it's not a very explosive team. Do you put Penn State in that Ohio State-Michigan class? Let's discuss it.
I've been picking Penn State to win the Big Ten the whole offseason and into this season. So they've done nothing to disabuse me of that. I would like to see them go deep a little more often, like the caller said. But now what that guy was asking was, do you ever draw up plays, passing plays that have no check down option? And James Franklin, as a competent football coach, was like, no, why in the hell would you do that? It's basically what the guy was espousing is the strategy I use when I play my son in Madden and he beats me 56-0 because I run 4 verts every play and just chuck it deep. But no, I do think if Drew Aller could show himself to be a little more explosive, but I don't mind Drew Aller not being particularly keen on putting the ball in harm's way. I think that's a good quality to have in a quarterback. You know, we always used to bag on the Alabama quarterbacks for being game managers, but they game managers their way to national championships. So I think that's the thing is, when you have a defense like they have, you can afford to be a little conservative offensively. Now, the question is that good enough when you play Ohio State, when you play Michigan? It might be good enough when you play Ohio State. If you watch the Ohio State-Notre Dame game, you can get Ohio State into a game in the teens. I think Penn State could win that. I don't think you can win against Michigan in the teens. You're going to have to throw over the top. And so we'll see if they can evolve by November 11th. But that's going to be a fun set of games that, you know, Ohio State, Penn State next week, Michigan, Penn State, November 11th, Ohio State, Michigan at the end of the year. Like, those are going to be spectacular.
Andy, Michigan, they've played 4 offenses that rank 108th, 118th, 122nd, and 123rd. Is their defense as good as what we've seen so far, or is it a combination of playing some incompetent offenses and being very good?
Yeah, we don't know yet. I think a lot of it is their opponents have not been good. But I suspect, if you're talking to people who work in NFL circles and they talk about the level of talent that Michigan has on that side of the ball, I think they're going to be good against good offenses too. The problem for Michigan is their schedule sucks. I mean, they do not play a good team until they play Penn State on November 11th. So they will not have been tested at all. The thing that gives me faith in Michigan, though, is they beat everybody the same way every time. You don't get these weird up and down performances. They don't start slow. They just maul the crap out of somebody and play their backups in the fourth quarter. I'm okay with that. I can live with that. I mean, it's not the players' fault that the schedule stinks. It's the athletic department's fault that the schedule stinks. But I would have liked to have seen them play somebody good out of conference. Like next year, they play Texas early in the season. You'll have a much better idea. And when the Big Ten expands, they'll have to play a tougher schedule because they add Oregon and Washington next year. They'll have to play them. All of a sudden, that's a different story. We're going to get to see them challenged a little more. But right now, we haven't seen it yet. Again, the consistency leads me to believe that when they do play somebody good, they'll be fine.
Andy, just an all-time competition and reputation flip by Harbaugh since COVID at Michigan, right? Because leading up
wild.
Until then, it really is fascinating. It's almost like it's 2 different lives, completely 2 different human beings.
It's 2 different staffs. That's what it is, Patrick. It's 2 different coaching staffs, essentially. And what he did is he got significantly younger, and he got a bunch of guys that recruit well and develop well. I think what you look at with Michigan is they are recruiting a little bit better, but the gap between them and Ohio State in terms of what you bring in terms of star rating isn't that different than it was before. The difference is what comes out. like what goes into the NFL draft. There's very little gap at all. And in fact, if you look at what Michigan's going to put in the draft this year versus what Ohio State's going to put in the draft this year, Michigan's probably ahead.
Andy, when you look at Oklahoma, they get a huge win for Venables there. How legitimate is this team? Dillon Gabriel gives you a legitimate dual threat in terms of making plays with his legs as well. But can this team carry that win not only through the rest of the regular season, but into a potential rematch against Texas in Arlington?
Well, the regular season, I don't think is going to be a problem for either one of those teams. I think Oklahoma is going to roll through the rest of its schedule, and Texas is going to roll through the rest of its schedule. The rest of the Big 12 is not very good this year. So it's not that I'm worried about. It's, can you beat Texas again? And I think Texas having a chance to see you and know how you tick, that's going to make that matchup better the second time around. But I will say I was really impressed with Oklahoma's offensive and defensive lines because I wasn't sure how they were going to match up against Texas. And yes, they use tempo to negate some of what Texas's D-line can do because they're really good inside, especially. They have 4 defensive tackles that they rotate. 3 of them are definite NFL guys, probably high-round NFL guys. And they didn't get to do much in that game. Part of it was the tempo, but part of it was Oklahoma's offensive line was just good. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what it looks like the second time around because I am fairly certain there will be a second time around with a playoff berth on the line this time. But I thought Dillon Gabriel outplayed Quinn Ewers, and if he does that again, Oklahoma's going to win again.
Georgia football 2023 is fill in the blank.
Probably winning the national championship again. Now that we've seen it, we needed to see it. We need to see what they did last weekend to Kentucky. We hadn't seen that yet. We'd seen them kind of fart around a little bit against South Carolina and against Auburn. But now we know they have that gear. So, the Michigans, the Oklahomas, the Penn States, the Ohio States, the Alabamas, maybe. But if they play the way they played on Saturday night, I don't know that there's anybody that can beat them.
Can Alabama run the table in the SEC West? It looks like they've kind of settled in on Jalen Milroe now.
Yeah, and I think that's probably what's helped them figure things out because this was always going to be a better defensive team than it was an offensive team, but it felt like in the early going, even when Milroe was starting the first time around, that they were running an offense that they felt like either Jalen Milroe or Ty Simpson or Tyler Buckner could run. After the USF game, when they showed everybody, okay, Tyler Buckner and Ty Simpson aren't the guy, and said, we're going with Jalen Milroe, that's when things started to really get better because they really seemed to build the offense around Milroe, who is a very explosive runner and has a beautiful deep ball. If you're asking him to do a lot of intermediate type stuff, that's not his forte. But the high confidence short passes and the deep shots, he's really good at. So you add in what he can do for you in the running game, and you draw that extra guy into the box, and you go over the top. That's why he's become one of the more explosive passers in the country.
How about your boy Shane Beamer at halftime taking a chainsaw to the hedges there at Georgia, thinking he won a football game? What the hell was that?
My boy, I didn't go to that school. You did.
He's something. He is something. He's in the group chat.
Look,
Shane Beamer, you're in the group chat.
He knows. I mean, he's the one who said after last year's game, have you seen those players? So 14-3 at halftime, you're feeling pretty good. That you even got to that point, you're feeling pretty good. No, I believe Shane Beamer is trying to embarrass my alma mater this weekend. My alma mater is an underdog at Williams-Brice Stadium.
Yes, sir.
Mostly because I think the people in your fair town, not your Patrick, but everybody else's fair town at that station, I believe they've looked at Billy Napier's road record and they see what they see.
Napier's the Sharps aren't a big fan of Billy Napier, to say the least, at Florida.
The Sharps look at the data and they react to it. And the data say, notice data plural, data say, that the only road game he's won at Florida was a game when Texas A&M had most of their players out with the flu. That's a bad,
great.
Bad sign. That's why they're
on
underdogs
3.
this weekend.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.